And welcome. This is the Northwest EcoBuilding Guild's March education event, Thriving into the Future, learning about water, food, and energy resiliency at home. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pathway Design and Construction and 475 High Performance Building Supply. I have a couple housekeeping items and announcements prior to delving into today's speaker presentations. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks all for joining this evening, especially on this beautiful sunny afternoon here in Seattle. First thing we'd like to do is the Northwest EcoBuilding Guild would like to acknowledge that we work on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, original stewards of the land past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. I will post in the chat a local resource and organization called Real Rent. You can do something today to stand in solidarity with the first peoples of this land by paying real rent. All funds go directly to Duwamish Tribal Services to support the revival of Duwamish culture and the vitality of the Duwamish tribe. We welcome you all to learn about the traditional Indigenous lands you live on by visiting Native Lands website posted in the chat. We understand that not all folks here on the call are based in Seattle. So I'll post the nativeland.ca, a great website to learn about the traditional Indigenous lands you live on. So welcome. This event is being recorded. A recording of this event will be made available to folks who registered through Eventbrite, as well as Northwest EcoBuilding Guild members. In fact, all members have access to previously recorded webinars, trainings, workshops, guided tours, etc. I'll provide some more information around that. Tonight, if you could please mute your microphones during the presentations, and then feel free to ask questions in the chat, but there will also be 5 minutes after each presentation for open Q&A, as well as a deeper discussion after all presentations. If you have any logistical questions or challenges or have trouble connecting, I'll post my email and phone number in the chat, and you can go ahead and reach out to me. I'll be monitoring that throughout the evening. So first, we'd like to thank one of our sponsors this evening, 475. 475 has a passion for building science, sustainable material use, and passive house for protecting the environment and making the world a better place. Consequently, their mission is to supply essential materials, building components, and knowledge that will lead transformation of the North American construction industry toward making durable, high-performance, passive house, and zero-energy buildings. They excel because they offer best-in-class products with highly specialized focuses through peer-to-peer communication and launched on a business-to-business interface. They deliver their products in a timely manner from centrally located warehouses and through stocking lumber yards regionally. They support with intense attention to customer service, building code recommendations, hygrothermal modeling, bountiful knowledge resources, and on-the-ground representatives. Whether your next building project is a new building or a retrofit, residential or commercial, a passive house, or just a very durable and comfortable building, they look forward to working with you. Thank you again so much, 475, for being a longtime Guild sponsor of these wonderful webinars and programs. And we'd like to also give a shout out to Pathway Design and Construction. Pathway Design and Construction creates beautiful, intelligently designed living spaces for discerning homeowners in the greater Puget Sound area. They were founded in 2008 and boast a team with well over 100 years of combined experience. Their full-service remodeling firm uses sustainable, efficient processes and materials to craft healthy homes that enhance the lives of our clients. Led by brothers Paul and Mike Kocharhook, Pathway was Seattle's first BIAW certified builder, a designation from the Building Industry Association of Washington that requires a continued commitment to quality and demonstrated ability to deliver exceptional results. More important than accolades, however, is the Pathway mission, which ultimately extends beyond designing and building the places where people live, work, and play. They believe they have a duty to protect their planet and future generations, both as professionals and as individuals. They support initiatives that promote stewardship and social responsibility. and view themselves as a leader among builders and thriving and environmentally conscious community of Western Washington. Thanks again, Pathway, for being a longtime Guild sponsor for our programs and webinars such as these. Some fun, quick announcements to get the night started. If you like what you see tonight and also previous webinars, please join us for our upcoming events. On April 26th, we have a wonderful webinar all about retrofits and remodels. We'll have representatives from the Built Green certification program, builders, sharing their case studies and just best strategies on greening your home, and some easy switch outs that also may have IRA tax incentives coming up. April 29th, we'll go into a little bit more detail, but that is, mark your calendar, our wonderful and annual Northwest Green Home Tour. May 24th is the 2021 Washington State Energy Code training. Join us as we engage folks from the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance and Passive House as they break down the 2021 code that's just around the corner, being passed this July. And June 28th, we'll kick off the summer with some passive cooling strategies and designs from local architects and designers here in the Pacific Northwest. So some really fun upcoming webinars, workshops you don't want to miss. And to give us a little bit more detail and background, I want to welcome John, if he's available and wants to say a couple words about the upcoming Northwest upcoming Northwest Green Home Tour. John Kawaguchi, are you online? And
I'm here.
Want to give a shout out? Great. Yeah, thanks, John.
Hi, my name's John Kawaguchi. I'm a member of the EcoBuilding Guild, and I'm co-coordinating this year's Northwest Green Home Tour, which is going to be on April 29th. We have a great lineup, but there is still room for more participants. So if you are a builder or an architect, or you know of a great project that the public should know about and visit, please go to nwgreenhometour.org to read more about the home tour and sign up. There's also a form on the site for registering to be a visitor of the tour, and so you can go ahead and get those tickets now. I know one of our great co-hosts, TJ, is going to be showcasing something. So that is the caliber of the types of projects that are going to be on the tour. So we hope to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Looking forward to it. And lastly, before we introduce today's speakers, I'd like to remind all to consider becoming a Northwest EcoBuilding Guild member today, checking out our member benefits, such as our member-only content and event replays. This is a library of just almost hundreds of webinars and workshops and trainings we have hosted over the past years at your fingertips, as well as discounted pricing on all events. You will also be featured on our Green Pages directory that gets a lot of, that is publicly accessible to folks looking for a green supplier, manufacturer, perhaps a sustainable designer, architect, or remodeler. We'd love to feature you and your business on the Green Pages directory. There's also technical expert forums. So if you have a code question, we have chat opportunities for that, as well as just many networking opportunities in becoming a Northwest EcoBuilding Guild member. So I welcome you all to check out our member options at ecobuilding.org. I'll post a link in the chat. Wonderful. Well, it gives me great honor and privilege to announce tonight's speakers. We are so grateful and lucky to have such a wonderful spread of knowledgeable speakers talking to us this evening about building resiliency at home. We'll start the night with Jake Harris with Stone Soup Gardens, and then Zsofia Pastor with Farmer Frog, and Narima Amin with iSeed Homestead will be presenting on food resilience, food and community resiliency. And then TJ Miller will wrap us up tonight with A&R Solar, talking about energy as well as community and home resiliency. So welcome this evening to our speakers. We're so lucky to have you and are so grateful for your time and expertise shared this evening. So thank you. I'll go ahead and stop sharing and turn it over to Jake Harris. And Jake, you can start sharing whenever you're ready.
Great, and hello everybody. It's so great to be here with the EcoBuilders Guild, and so honored to be here with TJ, Narima, and Zofia. Thank you all. Let me start the slideshow, that would be helpful. There we go. So I am Jake Harris, and I am here with Stone Soup Gardens as our company. And we are a landscaping company, landscape build and design, and we focus on permaculture as our primary motivation for what we do, and it informs how we work with our clients, both community and residences, to transform their homes. My day to day, I consisted of meeting to look at a chicken coop, running down to check out some beautiful nurse logs for a site that's going to have a culvert that we're making into a tube slide, doing a low use water irrigation system, and checking in with some clients that we just did rain gardens and cisterns with. So I kind of, we do a little bit of everything as permaculture builders, but I'm really well known for doing a lot of water. And today I've been asked to talk about water resiliency for the home and community. So yeah, I think, you know, when we're talking about water resiliency, and I think about permaculture, I think about, oh, how do we look to animals and the natural world, and are we doing water resiliency like cactuses and camels, and we're collecting all the water for ourselves? Are we looking to it as beavers, where we're radically transforming spaces for ourselves that happen to benefit many other beings? Or are we looking at water resiliency as forests do, where every drop is maximized to many different beings working in intentional and unintentional community together? And when I look at our home for water resiliency, we talk about reduce, reuse, recycle, right? I mean, those are the things that we can do for water. And so we're going to talk a lot about reuse and recycling in this presentation, but because I was asked to talk about cisterns and gray water. But before we even do that, I want to encourage people to reduce their water use, plant native and climate analogous plants in your gardens. Try to minimize the amount of water you need to use. Think about only using irrigation systems to start your garden the first couple of years and then let it go. From there, grow food, get more perennials in there. You know, people do a lot of vegetable gardening, and there's so many wonderful native edibles and raspberries and things that will evergreen huckleberries, plants that will, yeah, I'll leave Sophia to talk more about that. But yeah, low water use utilities in your own home before we try and make a whole system to have a cistern that's feeding the water for a home. We talk about, hey, how do you reduce to make sure you got low flow toilets, to make sure you have low use utilities like dishwasher and laundry. So, and then, yeah, we'll be talking today a little bit more detail on the reuse and the recycle pieces. So I'm gonna start with cisterns, and I'll do my best to go through a lot of information in a short amount of time. Rain recyclers. Oh, and one more thing before I get really started. I'm not going to be able to join for the panel discussion at the end. So if there's questions that come up, please feel free to put them in the chat. There'll be a 5-minute question time at the end of my presentation, but I'm going to have to hop off to take care of my kiddos, help take care of my kiddos tonight. So just to put that out there. Thank you. All right. So yeah, as I said, we love getting to do rain collection systems for reuse. And I'll talk a little bit about how we analyze a site for them, but I'll just bring up a few examples of great systems for resiliency. Bastyr University hired us to put in this cistern for one of their greenhouses, and this has a pumped with microfiltration to go out to all their vegetable starts and other plants that they start out in the greenhouse. Paradise parking plots down in Kent. Oh, please check out this website and learn more about this project if you're not already aware of it. We got to do the original design there. They got lots of water management funding for flood control funding to transform 1.5 acres of parking lot into a community farm with some really amazing bioswales and rain gardens that we got to design with the youth there. And my company put in those cisterns you see in the picture over here that are collecting, that's well 16 now 20, yeah now 20, we put in another cistern this fall. So there's 20,000 gallons of storage collecting off of a 16,000 square foot roof that then feeds 50 different vegetable plots for people, refugees and asylee seekers from around the world who are growing food in Kent together in a really amazing project. That's just a little bit more about that space. Yeah, kind of another really cool project that we had the privilege to work on was the block project. The folks here at EcoBuilders Guild have heard of them. A great group of architects and builders who all come together to make tiny homes that provide housing for recently unhoused folks in the backyards of folks who have big hearts. So we got to work on Block Home 9 in the Rainier Beach neighborhood, and we got to plumb and put in a tank that now is connected and is actually feeding is filtering the water and is feeding the showers and the toilets and the laundry for the tiny home in there. So we get to do some really fun and cool stuff. Oh no, there's an extra S in cistern location. So these are just some bullet points to help. I was asked to kind of talk about how to analyze a site for the use of cisterns. Cisterns are not great for every site because they can be large, and you want to take into account where they can go. Some clients consider them eyesores. Sometimes if you have rockeries involved, you want to make sure that you're not going to compromise a retaining wall with a ton of water, for instance. So you want to think about, if you're going to be collecting water, what happens when you run out of collection space. So you have to think about the overflow. Are you overflowing to the street, to the side sewer, or a rain garden? You want to utilize gravity for collecting water as well as hopefully for using the water. If you're when we think about keyline water design, we think about setting a cistern at a higher plane above our vegetable garden or any of our gardens that we want to use the water in. Thinking about what is going to be the base, what kind of soil are you setting on, what do you need to do to support what can be a ton or two of water. I say bigger is better, both from the work to put in a cistern. You're going to do the same amount of almost the same amount of plumbing for a 75-gallon rain barrel as you are for a 2,000-gallon cistern. So try and maximize what can fit your space, because the more water that you save, the more money you're saving by doing that project. Don't block windows, pathways, or utilities. That's a kind of obvious piece of the puzzle, but we don't want to block those. And design for maintenance. I'll say a little bit more about that as we go through here, but I think that's so key. So many people think, oh, I'll put the cistern in, but how are you making sure that it's easy to maintain? Getting debris filters on there that wash away the debris so they don't collect in a basket that will get clogged, and then you have to go out there when it's raining. Designing for maintenance also means I see so many people string a bunch of cisterns together. I would rather have one cistern to maintain than a bunch of small cisterns that are all tied together, because all of those plumbing connections have an opportunity to leak or be clogged, especially if they're smaller pipes. Like I've seen some wonderful demonstration sites, well-meaning demonstration sites, where they'll put in rain barrels tied together in a whole chain, and that it just becomes a clog. It becomes a series of clogs over time, is what I found, if you're not constantly maintaining. So designing for maintenance. Stable base, I just here's a couple examples. We love to use manor stones. That's the one with cinder blocks on it. There is a screen filter on top of that tank. That one's kind of tucked in over there by some windows. Cisterns can be very large and they don't have to be right next to the plumbing of the house. I think I showed this slide because that's called our arbor duct. I've done arbor ducts that are just short like that one, and I've done them to be 30 feet across the yard to get the cistern away from the house. And that's a 960-gallon cistern that's conveniently already had some built-in shrubs that we could hide it behind. And so it doesn't become the eyesore, and it's right in the garden for where the water is needed. So that's a nice feature. There we go. Cistern plumbing. This is a great photo because you've got a slimline cistern. This is one that I don't know if folks have seen cisterns before. This is a common one in the city of Seattle because you can get this up at the Seattle Conservation Corps in Magnuson Park. And the 530-gallon tank, what's really nice is it's only 2-foot diameter. You can't quite see the perspective on this, but that is not a thin column. That is a 7-foot long tank that's 6 feet tall and only 2 feet wide. We have it strapped to those 4x4 posts that are set in concrete brackets, so that in case of an earthquake, that's not falling over and causing any trouble for anybody. And it's nice that the picture is right next to a little 75-gallon rain barrel. So this one underneath deck spaces can be nice. That's a back porch kind of deck. And that's a great spot to put a tank like that. Lots of options. I think that's one of the things. Lots of different cistern options out there. These are 3 of the companies most common out here in Norwesco, Bushman, and Premier. I could have a whole discussion about tank selection, but I think knowing what tanks are available really helps to inform how you can maximize your own space. Yeah, so I will jump now to gray water. I didn't need a time check just to.
You're great. You're doing well.
Great. Okay. If I'm talking too fast, well, then maybe it'll be more time for questions. So gray water. So reuse is resilience. There is oftentimes, actually, I get a lot of people who kind of get gray water and cistern water like mixed up. And they'll say, oh, I want a gray water system. And really what they want is a water reuse, a rainwater reuse system. But gray water is reusing water that has been slightly used, is what I like to say. Oh no, this slide is, oh, there we go. This slide has activities. These slides were given to me by Laura Allen of the Seattle Graywater Action Network. And so some of these ones I'm reusing from a previous Graywater presentation. And so just to give her a shout out, she's awesome down in Portland, but originally from California, has done a lot of work to get Graywater more legal in all 3 of the West Coast states here, California, Oregon, and Washington. Yeah, this just kind of helps to think about, okay, our indoor water, if we want to bring that into reuse, We got 25% of it's coming from the clothes washer and 20% from the shower. I want to say toilet and dishwasher, those are, we don't consider those gray waters. Toilets we consider black water, and dishwasher can be dark gray water, or kitchen sinks can be black water or dark gray water. And what that means is that's not water you want to reuse for irrigation. That's not water you want on the surface of your garden space, because it needs more treatment. And there's a reason we have indoor plumbing. They brought us out of the ages when everybody had dysentery. So the simplest gray water solution is a bucket. A bucket is the best. If you want to start doing gray water right now, disconnect your sink, the P-trap on your sink, and have it go into a bucket and reuse that. So when you brush your teeth tonight, you could be using that water to water your garden. You can use it for irrigation when you're taking a shower, and you can put a bucket in your shower, and you have an automatic gray water collection space while you're taking a shower. So I highly recommend starting with a bucket and see how much water you're actually sending down a drain. But you can also go way more complex. Oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have the Bullitt Center in this fair city of ours, and so many wonderful things. And they have a really awesome gray water system, as well as a rain collection. They have it all. They have the rain collection system that's then feeding the all of their water use, and then it's going the water that goes from the sink goes back out into the gray water space, or goes into a landscape irrigation from the gray water. So this is a fabulous system, and they've definitely had to push a lot of the codes and have lots of conversations with the King County Department of Health. Yeah. So branch drain gravity system, you got to be able to access the drainage plumbing. Usually gray water systems a branch drain system is when we're taking our shower or our sinks from our house and bringing it out into the garden. And it does require plumbing inspections. It does require you to open up walls. It does require licensed plumbers to be involved. This is one, if you're doing a house remodel, hey, we're talking to the right group of people. If you're in the midst of a house remodel, this is a great system to bring in. This is not like an easy retrofit, because you do have to cut open walls and change plumbing routes and repipe things. And you need to have inspectors out to be verifying all of that. So I do recommend this and consult on it, but it's much rarer in this city to actually have that. There's a few homes on the Green Home Tour that I know we did one. I won't shout out names, but yeah, so that great system to put in, because our showers are have a lot of water that goes down the drain. And if you use the right soaps and shampoos, it can be safe to reuse in your garden. A very common one is laundry to landscape, because our as we said, 25% of the laundry to lands of our water use in our homes is usually laundry. I have 2 kids, so I got a lot of laundry going on. I have a laundry to landscape system that every time I do my laundry, I get to give myself a high five, because I'm watering my mushroom patch. I'm watering a couple of my fruiting shrubs and my kiwi berries that are all growing on an arbor duct that feeds my cistern. So I love the laundry to landscape system. This one, it's wonderful. The gray water codes have been upgraded here in 2000. I want to say 2010. It was when they did a reevaluate, and laundry to landscape does not require any special permitting. an inspector might look at a system when they're coming for other things, but it does not require a permit as long as you're following the best management practices. Typically, you have a valve so that if you're using bleach or you're using a not good laundry detergent, to send it down to the normal drain, and then you could turn on the valve and send it out into mulch basins in your garden. You want to get the gray water system to enter the ground below ground, so generally like 6 inches below the top grade, so that it's directly watering the roots of the plants. And then you want to make sure you're using we should all be using eco-friendly detergents in general. But one thing to be mindful of is if you're going to reuse water, make sure you're not using a powder-based detergent, because generally powder-based detergents' active ingredients are salt. And we don't want to just be dumping salt on all of our fruit trees, because, well, then we'll be defeating the purpose of adding health to our garden. I just thought I'd show a few pictures here of laundry to landscape systems. There's the valve. There's the black piece of plumbing on top of that helps to reduce the pressure in the pipes and keep the water flowing. The little pump on your laundry machine will pump up to 6 feet above the machine, so you can send that up higher in the wall, or I put mine up in my ceiling and then sent it gravity out to out into the landscape. And and then those we generally use little irrigation boxes to cap where the gray water enters into the mulch basin. So that's that. Another one. Now this one, if anybody from the King County Public Health Department or DCI is watching, they might be bemoaning that I'm encouraging these, but my goodness, is it just disgusting that we flush the toilet with clean drinking water. I think the rest of the world would look at us with just complete flabbergasted. So I'm hugely encouraging of sink toilets, and they are well, to back up a second, why would I say that someone would be discouraging of them? One of the principles of gray water is not to store gray water, that you don't want to store slightly used water, because slightly used water then could be have a place where bacteria could grow and develop and might poison yourself or other beings if it were to be drinking. So we label gray water pipes with purple to denote them as non-potable water. Now, the reason that I'm encouraging of a sink is we're talking about a toilet here. If you're drinking out of a toilet, you've got other problems. And I love that the sink to toilet combination, you wash your hands when you flush the toilet. So you press a button, the sink, or you turn on the sink, and then it actually is flushing the toilet for you, and you're sending soapy water down. So you're actually cleaning the bowl every time you're flushing the toilet. It's just a no-brainer. I think these should be in every home. And there we go. Here's a few other links. I mentioned Laura Allen, the WaterWise Home. These are great. Gray water is still, I think Creating an Oasis with Gray Water, Art Ludwig, is a book I read early on that has really helped inform me. Brad Lancaster is a great person to look at. Gray water is less common up here because we're so water rich, but in the Southwest and in California, it's huge. Brad Lancaster's out of Tucson. In Tucson, it's now mandatory for all homes to have a gray water stub out, so that not that every house has to have a gray water irrigation installed, but any new house has to have a gray water stub out already included in the code, so that it can be hooked up out into the landscape, because it's much easier to do that when we're building it than it is after all the walls are closed in. So that's a wonderful thing. Brad Lancaster is a great resource, lots of good videos and education from him. And how are we doing on time?
We're just about coming up in just
At the end?
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll jump back. We're so lucky to live in this wonderful city. So grateful to live here. Rainwise is a program that helps to fund cisterns and rain gardens and has been building our water resiliency grid, kind of collectivizing the grid in that way by helping homeowners to install cisterns and rain gardens with these rebates. Really exciting. Was talking to the new head of Rainwise, Jessica Farmer, who's just a great human being. And they finally have, after 10 years of this program, they finally are increasing the rebate. And it should be maximizing more gardens. I won't say what I know the rate's going to be because they haven't gone officially public with it, but it's a significant increase, and it's going to be exciting for that. So Rainwise, and then I'll also just give a shout out to all these other wonderful cities and agencies that are doing various rebates to help encourage folks to do water wise and water resiliency, whether it's rain gardens, cisterns, native plants. Lots of great programs are springing up that there's government support for homeowners to transform and make our whole area more water resilient. So that's just wonderful. This is a map. This is actually, that yard is not, this is not a graphic. This is actually done by stewardship partners. They got a grant to transform this house in White Center into a Salish Sea rendition. And yeah, and so this was actually what they did, and they went out and they made a little model on it and all of this stuff. So that's just kind of cool. Okay, I will break now for and see what's in the chat here. And thank you all. Thank you for welcoming me here.
Thank you, Jake. I loved that last slide you showed of the San Juan Island map, or Puget Sound map, really, in that design, beautiful landscape design. Are there any questions for Jake? And please feel free to post them in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, feel free to turn on your video and your microphone. These are open forum style Zoom webinars, so we welcome all. And yeah, we'll take a couple of questions for Jake. It looks like James did post a question in the chat. If you wanted to address that one, Jake, to start.
Yeah, gosh, I didn't even talk about the safety of the water coming off the roofs in talking about this. That was a early thing. Sightline did really good research on roofs and the safety for using rainwater in gardens, and especially veggie gardens, because that's something that people get concerned about. It's like, oh, what's coming off the roofs and what am I putting in my bodies? So one, I'll just say, in general, the roofs are safe. Any roof is safe to drink from, some better than others. Cedar shake roofs are the worst because of actually more from rodent poop and bird poop, and then some of that gets mixed in. But composite roofs, metal roofs, all of them, you're as drinking the water, you would be exposed to more of the heavy metals from a roof. But once it goes out and waters the soil and then gets pulled up by plants, there's really minimal amount of threat to the food that you're eating. So that's a nice kind of transition for Zophia's presentation. And then the acidic from moss growth. Yeah, that's another thing. I think when you're using a cistern or putting in a rain garden or redirecting the water anyway into your garden, when people use moss removers on your roof, you're poisoning your garden too. I think that was one thing. I had a client who's like, hey, we put in all these plants and they're immediately dead. And I'm like, well, I see that moss has gone off your roof. And then I looked at which plants were dead, and it was the Scotch moss, and it was the woolly thyme, and it was the plants that would be really impacted by that. So yeah, I hope that, yeah, I see that adding lime, yeah, that's a good way to balance the acidic.
Don just popped a question in real quick. Any news on next steps with the proposed new state regulations for non-potable water in homes? Are you tracking that at all?
Yeah, John and I chatted on that. I don't have any news to report on that. Unfortunately, John and I were chatting about that, and I said I was going to follow up on diving on it, but it's been a busy spring right now. So I don't have news on that. Oh, Sophia, you designed that? That is wonderful. Oh my God, I love that. Yay. I'm just setting up your presentation left and right here. This is good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Before we move on to Sophia, is there any more questions for Jake? Nice. Jake, thank you. That was so informative. Holly, I really appreciate the time you took this evening. Please stick around as long as you can. I understand you have little ones though to get ready for the evening, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insight. And if more questions come in the chat, please feel free to answer them if you can.
I just saw Clifford Armbruster just asked the term, he heard sub out, but I'll just say stub out the pipe that they'll put in a pipe that will be already plumbed for gray water that will be stubbed through either the foundation or through the wall. But yeah, I'll respond to any other questions in the chat, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jake. Wonderful. Awesome. Our next speakers include Narima Amin and Sophia. Please feel free to, I know you don't have anything to share as far as screen-wise, so yeah, please feel free to take it away. And Narima, I have downloaded your presentation, so when you're ready to present, just let me know and I'll screen share.
Yeah, and Nina, it's okay. I can, since Sophia is just going to speak without a slide, I can do the same as well. No issues.
Nina?
Yes.
How many minutes do I have?
Oh, yeah, like around 20 to 25, if that works okay for you.
Oh, for me, and then what about Narima?
And then Narima,
together?
so sorry, yeah, together about 20.
Okay, all right. So I will take about 10 minutes and then have time for questions.
Great.
Yes, Jake did a wonderful job with that last slide, and it brought back a lot of memories. It was very good to see that. I was fortunate that Stewardship Partners asked me to design a project that would tie our community together, and I came up with the design for the Puget Sound, and we had the greatest fun with that with Aaron and the rest of the wonderful team at Stewardship Partners. It was amazing. And it, looking back now, I don't know, I will introduce myself really briefly. I am a horticulturist, arborist, permaculturist, urban agriculturist. I hold multiple certifications and various things in these fields. Essentially, if things have roots, I probably have something to do with it, around it. I have been part of the rain garden and low impact development projects in the area here in Puget Sound, and also internationally abroad. I wrote the Rain Gardens for the Pacific Northwest book, and have been part of the review and revision of the handbook in 2013, and now we are revising it again with Curtis Hinman and the team. It will be a new handbook coming up, hopefully later this year, no later than early next year. So with that, I wear many hats, and since 2009-10, that winter, we have been running a nonprofit called Farmer Frog as well. We have started this out at a school garden in response to the latest last Great Recession, and grew food for folks who didn't have any, lived in their cars and needed some fresh produce. Out of that came a massive school garden program. And through that and a farm site in Woodinville Paradise Farm, we were servicing 25,000 plus families before COVID. 3 years ago, COVID hit, and we responded and pivoted into large-scale food distribution and partnered up with hundreds of organizations, packing houses, other farms, all kinds of other farms, small producers and large producers, grocery store chains, and many other ways to acquire food. Since March 2020, we have been working at it every single week, and we now have moved over 160 million pounds of food in 36 states to over 3 million people. So we still have our education programs, and we have a lot of other things going on. We also farm. We have livestock mainly, but we also do greenhouse production, aquaponics, and food forests. We have discovered through this process that community is really key. And this is how this last slide of Jake just really ties in so beautifully, because problems cannot be addressed in isolation, and hunger is actually a very real issue. Even for people who eat every day to the full 5+ times a day, hunger can be a problem. The nutritional value is not there. So we were talking about this with Nina, and that, how to grow food at home. Narima will touch on a lot of the neighborhood projects that she's organizing. But when I see lines of cars, and like, for example, today our wait time was 3 hours, I believe. We have massive lines, and it's been growing steadily now since the 1st of March because of the food benefits that have been cut so severely. Families who have been getting $280 of food benefits a month now getting $28, and food prices have gone up. So we have to solve this problem. And while we are actually handing out food to people, various fresh produce and other items, that's not a solution. It's a solution for now so that they eat today. But we have to have real solutions. And these issues with real solution are really tricky, because it requires complete shift of our systems, not just the food system. A large part of the problem is what we see is that we have families who are actually working households, but they are not earning a livable wage. And everything else costs so much as well that it's a limiting aspect. So we are looking at public spaces where food can be produced, schools, clinics, any kind of open area. And we are looking at it because it belongs to the community already. It's a public space. The public, through our taxes, we pay its maintenance, we pay its various expenses, and very rarely would we benefit to its full extent. So as I'm thinking about development and design and the various expertise in the audience here, we collectively can influence outcomes and put pressure on the people who are able to make these decisions, right? That edible landscapes, and especially in public spaces or public facing spaces such as front yards, become the standard. The reason I'm saying this is in areas of the world where people do grow their own food, while hunger is still prominent, it doesn't hit the same way as it does in the US. Right now, in our state, we have 49% need. Every second person amongst us is faced with various choices when they are actually not able to purchase nutrient dense food that they need, culturally relevant and physical need. That's a very high number. So we have to really change this, because if we want to solve it, we have to have people access that food, and food sovereignty, the choice, the option to choose, the option to have food that means something that is the right food for each individual, whether it's a culturally needed food or something that their health situation requires. It needs to be the right food. And we can actually make an impact, and we can make a change. So I would like to lead with this into Narima's presentation. And then I think that if there is still time, you know, we can add to it, but we definitely will be here for questions.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I have shared Narima's, Narima, I've shared my screen, and yeah, let me know if you'd like to, when you'd like me to advance the slides, or you're welcome to share without slides, whatever you feel comfortable with. But yes, if Narima, if you're on and ready, we'll turn it to you.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I wanted to just produce this introductory slides. My name is Narima Amin, and I founded this nonprofit called Global Social Business Partners. It's about fostering entrepreneurship to solve social justice issues. And one of the projects we are creating is called iSeed, or iSeed University, which is a virtual learning platform that would tie to a physical space around food and housing and energy solution, holistic health. But that's long-term, lots of moving pieces there. So today I'm here to talk about the home scale model. So I'll talk a little bit about myself. This slide. I think I don't have the right view. Yeah, so you can call me a social innovator, move organizer. I've been looking for best practice solutions from 30 years ago, and came upon the food system and entrepreneurship platform. And I have a degree in economics and international development studies. And it was great to see Jake here, because we worked on a project together with the Bellevue Urban Garden, and he came to put in the cistern. Sophia, Pastor, and I go way back from 2013 when I did the commercial urban agriculture training with Will Allen. And part of the reason when I came back, one of the things we did was we helped to launch that 2.7 acre farm in Bellevue for an African farmer. And then I work alongside Sophia on her the Paradise Farm that she was building to make some connections for a little bit of resources, because she had done some incredible stuff there with her own other partners. And since 2016, we launched this, and if I can see, I think I'm not. Yeah, I'll have you move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so GSBP is about fund, which we're still working to build. It's about seed and ventures. It's about education, and it's about partnerships. I'll move to the next slide. Again, we went through that. It's about fostering entrepreneurship, engaging the young people to come up with ideas to solve social justice issues. And I gave some background about GSBP, which is we helped to launch that farm. We partner up with Farmer Frog. And next slide, please. And really, when you're coming to why you can come to the home scale model, you have to look at, and these are some old data, but you have to look at the social problem, and in terms of the hunger issue and other, we really do have hunger issue and a public health crisis. So that's for me came as to why the iSeed model came. Next, please. More again, talking about local problem, centering here, and how this is actually a global issue, and why we end up having refugees and all that, and we are the ones here locally have to be able to carry the burden for refugees. Next slide, please. And we're talking about, for me, I came up with the IC University Eco-Village model, which is from the homestead, they're connecting pieces, the various home actually having a village, but we'll talk about that bigger idea, in the future. But again, next slide. So we're gonna come down to the homestead again. There's some different components of the IC homestead IC model, but it will start with the homestead. So I'll go to the next slide. Oh, I think we're out. Yeah, I think maybe some slides got cut. Sorry. Yeah, I think somehow the slide that we shared, it got cut. You didn't get the.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, I'll have you stop share that, because for some reason all of the slides didn't come through.
Apologies.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. So basically, in 2016, let me back up. In 2010, we're now talking about a home scale model we're looking to develop, and here in Bellevue, and it's called IC the Homestead, or IC Permaculture Homestead. And many of you who are permaculture specialists know about permaculture. It's about, earth care, people care, fair share, and really looking at the climate smart agriculture component solutions, and also integrating the other elements of, energy solution, the water solution, and actually, caring for each other and the environment. When I started to do this in 2016, I've been trying. We created our Facebook page. We've been working to come up with various community members in the neighborhood, in the Puget Sound area. Ironically, for some reason, I see a lot of people who said they're permaculture specialists out there, but yet we have been unable to find a lot of them, because I know everyone is busy building their own programs and different things. And the only person really I know who was a permaculture person was this person named Jenny Pell back in 2010. And she helped to build out a home scale garden in Shoreline, and that happened in 2010. The idea, it was to engage community to grow more food, and be able to share with the community and engage more households to be doing more of that. So I started over in 2016 here in Bellevue. With the help of Farmer Frog, we helped to launch that farm in Bellevue, and that African farmer, he actually engages community to community to also grow more food, and he does his own education program also there, and engaging neighbors to grow food. I'm sorry, there's some distraction here and at the back here, so I'm just trying to get centered here. And then in 2016, we helped to engage some young people to be able to come alongside us to share more about growing and be able to be stewards in this project. So since then, when the pandemic hit, we started to do this program called Neighbors Feeding Neighbors, where a chef had started this program of feeding the community from her home, of feeding the community from her home, where people will bring the food to her house, and then she would take it to neighbors. Drivers would take it to the neighbors, and then so I decided to take on the IC Homestead decided to take on that component of the project, And so actually, helping to feed the community, we could all of a sudden decide, all of a sudden there was a need for that. The other part we were doing was also growing lots of food, lots of kale and some other greens, and we would actually take that to the food bank. In the meanwhile, obviously that's not enough, but so, Farmer Frog, they were able to, through their partners, be able to get a lot of the food rescued from different communities and be able to start out with onions and potatoes and get that to the community. So we were a facilitator in that process. I'm sharing all of that to say that in that whole pandemic situation, we were able to see how much it was important for us to be able to grow food and be able to really care for our environment and be able to take care of each other. So really that's the focus area for us right now. And we want to be able to engage the youth to do more of that. So we want to get more public spaces and coordinate with more home spaces and be able to have the capacity and volunteers and expertise and funding to be able to have more and more food grown for households to have what they need, to be able to share back, and also to give to the food banks. And in terms of where we at and our needs right now is to be able to, we got 5 scholarships to be able to have people to be trained more as have that permaculture background. So we got 5 or more scholarships from Oregon State University to take their 20-week permaculture design program. About 4 of those are global, the global connection. So then we can be able to also share virtually and connect with our global community. And locally here, there was we got 1 person being trained in that area, and the program is going to start in April. So we want to be able to have learn more about who is doing permaculture in the area, to be able to have more mentors and support, to have more people trained in permaculture. We're also looking to do the 10-week hands-on learning, which is taking this home from where the nonprofit is operating, to be able to have it be a model in the community, because there are bits and pieces we were working on the food side, but we also need to work on the energy solution component, and also building a small cottage as a small yard space, but in the backyard, how can you build a model tiny or small cottage at the back of the home that could represent what people could actually do to even address the housing crisis, and having a climate smart type house. And so we're looking for more people to be able to support us on that, doing that 10-week training, where we will have young people be trained through the hands-on learning process about permaculture and building out the space, and on the food side, be able to learn to design small spaces, public spaces, and their homes to grow more food in a sustainable way. So thank you for this opportunity to be here, and if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Thank you so much, Narima, and apologies again for the logistical challenges for your slides, but that was wonderful. We had a couple questions come up in the chat for both you and Shofia. Is there a program to help people store food for winter consumption?
So WSU used to have a master canner certificate program, which they discontinued because they didn't have instructors available for the extensions. We do have a space that will have now a learning kitchen. It's going to be actually opening at the end of April, early May. It's in Snohomish, and it has a learning kitchen space. And we have chefs on our team and canning experts who will be teaching food preservation, canning, freeze drying, and dehydrating. In our area, in Western Washington in particular, a lot of easy ways to store food is, for example, root crops, is simply not harvesting it. If you leave it in the ground and cover it with thick mulch over, and I'm not talking about feet, 6 inches, maybe a little bit more, but wood chip mulch would be just fine. You will be able to dig out your beets, carrots, parsnips, potatoes, all of the various root crops throughout the winter without any issues. And the roots will be just fine. In areas where the winters are really harsh and the soil freezes for long periods, deeper than just a couple inches, which is the case around here, you need to pick those roots out and store them differently. So those places would have root cellars, but again, in our area, because our soils are often so wet, it can be a difficult project. So sometimes above root cellars for areas that are colder can help, which can be as simple as a really well-insulated small shipping container. And it needs to be above freezing temperature and not bone dry, but also not really humid, because it needs to have ventilation. Because if you don't have enough ventilation, our biggest enemy here actually is not the temperature in Western Washington over the winter, but the humidity, and things mold very easily. So that would be something that you can build out of some simple sheds or shipping containers, but you're gonna have to have installation and ventilation, and that can be energy input. So you have to also evaluate, what makes sense. The lowest cost, obviously, that doesn't cost much, is keeping things in the ground and pick the root crops as you need them. Fruit can be stored again in not bone dry, but not humid spaces that are around upper 30, low 40 degrees during the winter time. And especially if the fruit is wrapped in paper, and they have to be varieties that hold. So some of our pears and apples would be good candidates for that. And yeah, I see the comment from Jake. Yes, we do have a lot of leafy crops that they will survive, and they actually sweeten up because sugar in the leaves will build up to reject, to prevent freezing. And so these leafy crops will taste sweeter during the cold months. You can actually use row covers on your beds, and that will help maintain. So if there is snow and such, the mud from the rain, it won't destroy the leaves. So I will let others speak right now too. And if Jake is here, then maybe he should be answering some of these too. And Narima, I'll let you guys speak.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Sophia. I really think there is no shortage of knowledge out there, and I think what's been lacking in this whole, I mean, even in the COVID crisis, is more people need to come to know that the preservation, the food growing and the preservation are important. And engaging the young people, especially engaging the community to have more of this knowledge, and bringing people forward to have this one-stop place. And it can be in multiple areas. One, to have physical kitchens, and to engaging community to do more of that and share back, and getting the experts to be able to come in and teach, and having more things being produced and showing how to preserve is needed. I have a curious question. How many people on this on this Zoom tonight? They are permaculture experts. Are there anyone here who is if you can put in the chat, how many of you have permaculture training?
Yeah, folks want to share in the chat. While folks are sharing, Narima, it looks like a question came in from Linda real quick, and she asked, you know, there's some, and Linda, feel free to chime in too, but she has a great aunt in Minnesota that's raised tables like at grocery stores with straw that the root crops were kept in. They were located in the basement. Have you seen that practice work here, where root crops are?
No. I will.
I haven't seen that here.
Yeah, I would like to say that it's actually a highly susceptible to rot solution. Straw bales without serious protection, meaning really dry, no humidity whatsoever situation, the straw over time in the winter time will mold. And so if you know, there is, in most cases, if you put the straw actually on your garden beds and you cover it again with a good 4 to 6 inches of layer, you will have no issues leaving it in the soil and pulling it. If you are trying to buy a large bulk, you have to have root crops that that are specifically harvested and sold to you for storage purposes, because most of the time the crops that you will be buying will be washed already. And if they are washed, especially if they are washed with a cleaning agent, the crop will not last. And that is a problem. So you will be able to store it maybe for a few weeks, but eventually it's not going to work. So you can, what you could do is, if you need to store it somewhere inside and you have a space where you could pile some material to store it, then I would bury them in sand and just not water them, but bury them in sand.
Thank you for sharing. Wonderful.
I had a couple other issues in that as well, about drying foods easily and storing them. What types of foods do you recommend, and would you have them stored in glass jars or containers? I know that we spoke with the Bishop's Storehouse, the Mormon groups that are in Kent, and they said that they dry all their foods and put them in number 10 tins, and that warehouse or storehouse is open to the public to purchase as well. So I don't know if you've been connected or seen that, or would recommend people trying to do that type of thing. And also, do you have an idea of how much food would be good to keep on hand?
Well, it varies how much food. It depends on your diet, how many people you have in your family, and so forth. But what I can tell you is that one zucchini plant can provide you with enough zucchini for a couple for sure for the year. But it really just depends, and it depends on what the year weather is and what your crop failure or not failure looks like. So it's a hard thing to gauge. Usually, if you have about 200-300 pounds of starchy vegetable potatoes or similar root veggies, and then carrots and beets and so forth. So you have, I'd say that for a person to winter over with nothing bought in the grocery store, I would probably start with 2-3 tons of various things, because it also depends on what you do with it. I juice, and that actually uses a lot of vegetables. Juicing does. So are you steaming it? Are you using it as roast? You know, there are so many good informations out there that I would recommend that you research it, but you research it with the knowledge of what you want to do for your own diet and various meals. And if you have kids, you're gonna need more, and you're gonna need different variety. Drying. Freeze drying works very, very well, and it will last 25 to 30 years. I would recommend that.
This meeting is being recorded.
And I would recommend that you use airtight, so vacuum packed packaging, because that way you can really ensure that there is no humidity, that it will spoil your product. Dehydration also works similarly. Yes, if your jar is very clean, really dry, your food is dry, absolutely dry, then you can keep them in the jars. You're gonna have to keep an eye on it though, because a little humidity goes a long way, unfortunately. And we have an abundance of it around here. So yes, glass jars. I haven't stored them in tin cans. And what I often recommend actually for people is none of us will be self-sufficient. We never were actually. We lived in communities that were self-sufficient, not necessarily individuals. And for better quality for everyone, and I think this is where Narima's work is so significant, because she really encourages the neighbors, taking care of neighbors and working together. You can create systems where neighbors share crops, neighbors share practices, and these equipment, freeze drying machines cost $500 to $5,000 each. You can have something that is more community based, and help one another out and find storage solutions too. So not every household has to have the same dry, cold storage room.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that was so interesting to, to learn about. I appreciate it. And I do want to just, oh yeah, of course, go, Narima.
Yeah, back to the neighbors feeding neighbors. It's that came out of the pandemic. It's just really, it could actually work, because I by myself.
Oh, sorry, Narima, it looks like you got muted.
I'd gotten lots of tomatoes, and I actually dried them in the oven, and then I put them in olive oil, and actually that lasted. And then a neighbor, came and said, hey, they actually stay for about a year, and I put it in a cool place, and I ended up sharing most of it. And then you have your salsas, and I remember about 5 years ago we did like 100 bottles of pickles. And again, we share it back with the community. And my Romanian neighbor, she did a lot of different types of relish. And so it would be amazing if we can get together as a community, how little bit, 5 bottles, 10 bottles, 20 bottles of different things, or it can go a long way, even freezing, the vegetables, and be able to share back. It's a long way, but I know there's lots and lots of resources. It's just the commitment to come together and find each other to help each other. It will be a big thing, and have the expertise out there, and there's a lot of resources out there. People talk about Washington State University, and the other. I think FBRC is another organization that have a lot of food practices that could be shared. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Narima. Thank you so much, Sophia. I think I'll pause there on the questions, and in the interest of time and to respect our speakers' time, we'll pass it to TJ next. But again, huge thank you so much, Narima and Sophia, for sharing your organizations, what they're doing, the impact they're having on communities. And also, I learned so much about food storage and just community impact, so I really appreciate it. And I do agree, leafy greens are actually a little bit more sweeter in the winter. They're really great. TJ, I will give it to you. Thank you so much for joining this evening, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you very, very much. I want to applaud the speakers. I've learned so much. I am the opposite of a green thumb. I wish I had a green thumb. And I wish I would have known Jake when I first was working on my house, because I would have loved a rain catchment system. So I'm really going to kind of talk about just from a individual homeowner, but then also I applaud the community aspect. For resilience, to do it alone is a daunting task. To be resilient of yourself, to do it as a community, if you can bring people together with all of the skills that each community member has, it really does make it a lot easier to do. If somebody knows energy, if somebody knows food, if somebody knows water in the community, resilience increases exponentially, rather than trying to have one person know it all. There's just it's impossible to know everything. So my kind of talk is kind of about what everybody talked about, and condensed into just what I did to try to prepare my family for resiliency. I spent most of my career in IT, so when there was a problem, while most people were coming home, I was leaving to go try to figure out and fix problems. So during a major event, I will likely have to leave home, not come home like most people. And I have clients that are in resiliency at the state level, federal level, local level, that kind of the same situation where when there's a problem, there's an earthquake, there's some major problem, instead of going home, we're leaving, and we have to leave our family behind. We're trying to leave our families in a decent position so that they can take care of themselves. Kind of just some background and context. I mean, why am I in kind of the energy resiliency side of things? I grew up in Montana and North Dakota. I worked in the oil fields as a kid. Spent most of my career. I came out here to go to the UW. Worked most of my career at Microsoft. Spent a lot of time in data centers and redundancy of data connections and power systems and all that. But then we had a conversation with our kids when we were in Hawaii, and my kids said, well, we don't plan on getting married and having kids because the planet screwed up. And that really kind of blew our minds. So we're kind of thinking, how can we try to help that, but also prepare ourselves for, issues that are going on. The last three months, I have been heavily focused on, there's some Washington State Department Commerce grants for resiliency. So we've been helping design nano and microgrids for community centers and water pumping stations and utilities and all sorts of things to try to bring up the resiliency factor. So resiliency can be done at an individual level, at a community level, at a state level, federal level. That's what I've been spending a lot of my time on doing. But first, I needed to make sure if I need to take off, how's my family going to be taken care of? So I recently rebuilt or did a major remodel. So our goals were, how can we be net zero? How can we not? How can we help reverse the kind of some of the climate catastrophes we're seeing? I mean, my friends in California, 12 atmospheric rivers. They've never seen anything like it. How can we make the place resilient for us over the years? So this is a home we built. I'll talk a little bit about the home in specifics, but then talk about the bigger picture. When we thought about resiliency, we thought about food, we thought about water, we thought about air. One of the problems that we're seeing here is we have another smoke season, and all the smoke was really affecting us. We have members of the family that have asthma, and so during the wildfires, they were having a hard time just breathing, right? So if you think about the order that you need, you need to be able to breathe, you need food and water, you need someplace to sleep, and you need food and water. So kind of the first thing we thought about when we were designing the place is how can we make it very resilient, including the air that we breathe. So we did put in a whole house HEPA ventilation system. So if there is major issues with fire that, you know, not only our home, but the community, we've reached out to the whole community. How can we provide a safe space and resources for the community in case of an emergency. So down the bottom left, you see a box, but essentially it's a whole house ventilation system. We put in 20 kilowatts of solar and a battery system, so the house has backup power, so that, you know, if there was an earthquake today, we could probably, it's March, you know, weather's getting a little bit better, we could probably make it through October before, you know, without any grid connection. So we generate enough energy and store enough that we can make it through. We've already talked to all of our neighbors, and we've talked to the community during a major event, whether it be, you know, just a normal power outage, but more likely the worst case scenario is like earthquake or cyber terrorism, where the grid is down for extended period of time. Here's what we can provide to the community. We can provide backup power for, you know, refrigeration and food, and we have some resiliency on water. I wish I would have known Jake years ago, a couple years ago, where I would have put in a major rainwater catchment. I would have loved to capture all that rain that's coming off that big roof that you see here. I calculated 40,000 gallons a year could be catched off this roof. I have no idea if that's correct. I used some calculator on the internet. But we really wanted to do that. We just couldn't find the right people that knew anything, or we called and emailed and nobody actually responded to us. But we'd love to do that at some point. So it's still on my wish list. So resiliency, we have 120 gallon. And I think I've tested this and it worked. I would love to see this in most homes. We have the incoming water system goes through a filtration system. We're not really using filtration, but I wanted to have it there for automatic shut off. If we saw a leak or something, we can shut it off remotely if we forgot to shut it off. And then we have 120 gallons of backup water supply. So if there was an earthquake and we lost the water mains, we should still have drinking water for a good chunk of the time. We'd love to have the rainwater catchment so that we could use that for, you know, irrigating the lawn, but also as an emergency water supply for the community. Like I said, still on the wish list. And then I wish I had a green thumb and we were doing a lot of work to have our own food supply, but I went back to my roots as from Montana and North Dakota. In the winter, we just had lots and lots of either canned food or freeze-dried food. So I just went down what I knew from hiking is just lots of freeze-dried food, you know, up in a storage up in the garage, so that we had several weeks of food to make sure we could make it through some tough times and help the community as well. At that point, I'm just going to leave it open for questions. I have hours of content I can talk about on resiliency for energy systems, but I just kind of wanted to open the floor and make it a conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, TJ. Does anyone have any questions for TJ and any of the other speakers online? I do believe Jake has stepped away for the evening, but has been open to sharing his contact information. So if folks have Jake's specific questions, I can get that to him as well. But yeah, any questions for TJ?
Am I on?
You are, Cindy. Yep. Welcome.
I'd love to hear about battery storage and being disconnected from the grid, and anything about the new hemp batteries I'm hearing about.
Yes. So I will start it out with batteries are not the inexpensive option, right?
Right.
So I did put in batteries. Years ago, we had 2 5-day outages that I lived up on Squamish Ridge, and I had a generator, and I gave my wife a very simple 21-step process for hooking up the generator and starting up and doing all the things you need to do. And she said, I would rather die in the dark and cold. So, all right, I need to kind of do something automatic. So this system is completely automatic. So if the grid goes down, it automatically switches over. Battery chemistries are evolving very rapidly. We went from, various battery chemistries. They're getting better and better. We haven't tested the hemp batteries yet. As soon as we have the ability, we try to test everything for a minimum of a year before we recommend it. But the kind of the steps, I have a whole other presentation. I think everybody should have a basic backup strategy, and that might just be, hey, I have a big, battery that fits in my pocket, and I can keep my phone, going so that I can let my friends and family know I'm okay. If the cell phone towers are up and running, the cell phone towers have backup power. And then there's levels of different power systems that you can put in place. This is a whole home backup system, which raises the price up significantly. And it's not something that people commonly do, even though we've installed hundreds and hundreds of these. This is kind of a luxury where it's essentially, if there's the grid outage, you barely even know it. Like it just, everything keeps working. It covers you for 4 to 8 hours per battery, and people can put in any number of batteries, but the cost continues to go up. So it's not within the financial reach of most people. So here at my house, I actually have it designed so that I can, if it's spring, summer, or fall, I can help power all of the homes around me just with an extension cord. Like you can hook their refrigerators, and they can charge things and run, key equipment in their house. That's just that they can plug in. I think this is an area that's going to change extremely rapidly. It's moving very quickly. But my recommendation is have a basic backup plan. My daughter has a Chevy Bolt, and I bought her a little $200 inverter that I said, if you turn on your car and you clip this on the battery that's underneath the hood, you got probably 5 days, 10 days that you can power your computer and your phone. So we can at least stay in touch with you. It's going to drain the battery in your car eventually, but you have a big battery in your car, but you can only get at it with 12-volt inverters. So it's very basic. So, have some kind of backup plan based upon the needs of your home. Some people have no need, and other people have, emergent conditions where they need to have backup power. And depending on their goals, we design systems that are, cover a whole spectrum. But I think the thing to really think about is, there's an earthquake today. Are you okay without power for 2 weeks? What's your plan? Have a plan, communicate it to your family. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Do we have water? Do we have food? Do we have whatever energy we need? And just be ready, because I did a stint with the fire department. I went through community emergency response training. And the thing at the end of it that really stood out to me is we're on our own for a couple of weeks minimum after an earthquake, after a Cascadia event. So I work with a lot of emergency preparation communities. And for the communities, it's really impossible for each member of the community to be ready. So what can we do at a community level Is there one or two places in the community centers, homes that have the capacity to provide resources that are going to be super needed during major events? And let's just have a plan. Just have a plan, any plan. Have a plan or plan to fail.
Thank you, TJ. Another interesting question came in from Caleb and Joe. What was the timeline for your remodel, including planning and final, when you were able to implement all these awesome changes? And how did you find the right people to coordinate all these systems?
Yeah, it was challenging. I do say that I loved working with John Novak at Velocipede. He was super helpful in all this because it was the land of, like, I think he called it the land of 1,000 decisions, and we were so overwhelmed. There was so many things going on, and I knew my area of expertise. There's so much, and having the guild and good architects and everybody to try to bring it all together. I think we bought the property in July. I think we were permitted in December of 2019. But by the time we broke ground, and I might have the dates wrong, we started demo the day COVID hit. So our timelines should not be looked at because everything got blown out of the water. So everything went to a grinding halt in, was that March of 2021? And we were expected to be completely done by like November. And we didn't finish until like May of the following year, just because everything, just resources and, staff and everything slowed down. Luckily, we didn't get hit with a bunch of increases in lumber that everybody else got hit with. We were done there, but it was yeah, definitely the long trail of things. The majority got done in 6 months, but then there was like another 6 months of just minor things that took a lot longer than they normally would. But overall, we survived, and we love the place, and we've been through. So our system logs it over 20 outages, but the longest has only been 2 hours, so no big deal. But again, my motivation was earthquakes and major issues on the grid, that when those happen, I'm likely going to be jumping in a car and leaving my family for a week or two. So I was hoping to get everything dialed in so they didn't have to worry about it.
Thank you. And one other question for you here. How do you think bi-directional EV batteries will be incorporated into our homes here in the future?
I wish it was here today. There is a lot of hurdles before we get there. So don't plan on it anytime before 2025. And even then, so one of my we do get that question all the time, and somebody will ask, well, it's like, I just want to use my EV for it. And it's like, hey, so what do you do for work? Oh, I travel extensively doing X. And it's like, you have a family, right? You're in Oregon. How does that help your family? So there is a definite understanding, right? So if you have some kind of electric vehicle, it is a giant battery, right? So a Tesla Powerwall is 13 kilowatt hours roughly, and I have a vehicle in my driveway that's 130. So 10 of those I have on 4 wheels, but I have no way of getting that energy out. I have to get the safety equipment, has to be UL listed, the transfer equipment. I need to have the company that manufactures that vehicle be okay with it, and the warranties. So it's gonna be a while before that's here. There's a few companies that are doing it today where they advertise it, but it tends to be you plug it in and then you have an outlet. and that outlet can power, you know, a load or a power strip of loads. It's not whole home where people think vehicle. I have a whole presentation on this. I could spend 2 hours talking about vehicle to load, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, levels of support. The short answer is don't hold your breath. It's going to take a while before vendors are out there. There are a few vehicles that are advertising significant, you know, vehicle to home where they can back up the home, and I'll use Ford F-150 Lightning. That's the most common. The challenge is, though, that is a super proprietary solution. We're working on testing it. We're still waiting for equipment to test it, but it doesn't integrate solar. It doesn't integrate, you know, generators and other things. And everybody just thinks, oh, I have this and everything works together. It's like, not yet. It's going to be a while. And just because if you put in that system and then you buy a new vehicle, do you really want to buy a proprietary solution that you buy a new vehicle and it's like, oh, that doesn't work with that vehicle. It only works with that vehicle. So the standards are really important. I come from IT where standards, like if it's not standards based, I don't want to even look at it. So it's going to be a while before all the standards are out there. And just an interesting fact, the only standard that's really true is the Japanese standard, which is CHAdeMO. They have a bidirectional standard that Japan enforced because after Fukushima, when those reactors desperately needed backup power, the generators were swamped in the basement with water, with seawater, and they had 100 vehicles that had all of the energy needed, but there was no way to get it back out of them. So Japan forced a standard solution for bidirectional power out of Japanese cars, which uses the CHAdeMO standard, which unfortunately did not take off in the rest of the world. The rest of the world uses CCS or Tesla for level 3 fast DC charging. So, you know, if you have one of those vehicles, there is a standard. But again, I think that standard is going to be trumped by other larger global standards. So I would say stand by, wait for the standards to settle down in the next couple of years.
Thank you so much, TJ. Checking the chat, looks like those are the only questions I'm seeing. Is there any other questions for TJ or any other speakers this evening?
I'd like to hear more about how to use my solar system when the grid goes down.
So a typical grid-tied solar system by code must shut down during a grid outage. So we're not backfeeding that power to the grid while linemen are trying to fix it. So the most common solution is we put in a battery system that has a transfer switch and the ability to control that solar system. So you can do it today. There's several good systems on the market that do that, even with even solar systems that were made years and years ago. There are ways to retrofit it so that your solar can continue to work. But I would very much like to stress that there are two types of outages. Down here in the bottom right, I like to show this graph. The red or the orange shows solar generation for a typical solar system. And then the blue shows typical usage. And so spring, summer, and fall here in the Northwest, we outproduce California, Washington, New Mexico. Our days are longer, our days are cooler. So the cooler temperatures allow more production. So spring, summer, and fall, we outproduce most places that everybody thinks of for solar. But in the winter, that's our shoulder season. That's when our solar production drops. So we design at the worst case scenario, which is like, we think of Christmas in December. So when we design a battery system, we try to understand what your goals are, and make sure it's going to cover the most common scenarios, which still for us are winter outages due to snow, ice, wind, and day by day, you know, you might produce significantly more than you use. But in the winter, we kind of assume the worst case scenario, like you're going to generate very little or nothing, and you're just running from battery. So I think battery systems are great, but they are not inexpensive.
Right.
They're not for everybody. And hopefully they'll continue to just drop in costs so that they become a common thing, because, and same thing with EV to vehicle to grid or vehicle to home. I would love to see that, as so everybody has some kind of basic backup power. Today it's, you know, it's challenging. There's technical hurdles.
Yeah, I have a whole house generator with a transfer switch already.
Yeah.
And I'd love to be able to hook in
Yep.
with that somehow.
Yep. There are solutions coming that integrate all that together. I like to always point out, you know, it's like, yeah, generator is running. If you have a 3-day outage, your generator is running, even though you only need enough power to charge your phone.
Right.
Right. It's like that seems ridiculous, but that's kind of the way it is. But eventually we'll get to a point where that generator might not be a fossil fuel generator. It might be a hydrogen fuel cell, so it's clean. But you know, that's a ways down the road. But have it so that, you know, if there's an outage, like at my home, if there's an outage, the first thing it kicks over, it's running from solar and battery, and then if needed, it will start the generator. But never, you know, haven't needed that. That's kind of the quintessential, is you only start those resources when they're needed. You know, if you can run from solar and battery, just do that instead of running a generator all day long.
Right.
Thank you so much. That's really informative. Well, we're just about wrapping up here. Thank you. I appreciate these diagrams too, especially to get a better understanding of how outages work. That's really helpful. Let's see, we have a few more questions. We'll do about 1 or 2 more questions, and then kind of wrap up some final closing remarks or closing comments and discussion items. Linda posted in the chat, do you see many or any options for people in condos to get some sort of solar and other energy sources you mentioned available to them? With so many apartments now, do you see any portable energy solutions for people who are not owners, but for multifamily buildings? Equity and energy sources would be a wonderful step forward in the affordable housing arena.
Yeah, with condos or apartment buildings, it's much more difficult. There are some good portable solutions out there, and I'm happy to follow up and send some links to ones that we've seen that it's like, okay, that's pretty good. What they're capable of doing is backing up some basics, right? So, you know, phones and lights, a refrigerator, if you have a little bit of larger system, which is very important. But they're not really capable of backing up heating and that kind of thing. But there are some decent solutions out there, and they're getting better. We'd love to see some, you know, kind of the infrastructure in buildings make it a little easier to integrate, you know, maybe a shared battery system, so that everything could all be backed up with, you know, kind of, it's like, hey, I, you know, belong to this condo or a place, and, you know, as part of the, you know, part of the benefit of it, it has backup power. But there's some hurdles there as far as, you know, who pays for what and all that sort of thing. But the short answer is yes, there are some good portable solutions. They aren't able to integrate like a rooftop system, just because they really don't have the ability to handle that kind of voltage or amperage. But you definitely can have, you know, think of something that you would take camping, right? So fold out solar cells, a battery system, You know, I think that's a great solution for a lot of people that, you know, don't have a roof of their own or a big enough roof for a solar system and battery. I think it's a great idea. And I'm happy to follow up with a couple of 3 systems that I've seen that, if I were in that situation, are the ones that I would pick.
Thank you so much, TJ. Wonderful. Any maybe last question for our speakers? Thank you so much, TJ, Sophia, Narima, and Jake, who has left us already. What an informative, wonderful night learning about community resiliency, energy, food, and water. I appreciate all of you sharing your organization's work, your work, TJ, with your remodel, as well as just information regarding each of these facets that build a home and community resiliency. I appreciate all the work you all put in and the time you put into serving as speakers this evening. And yeah, I'll leave the event open for about 5 more minutes if anyone has any last questions or fun discussion items or just wants to connect.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you everybody, and thank you, Nina, for having me.
Thanks so much. It looks like TJ, one last little question from John. How did those HEPA filters work? Or how well did the HEPA filters help with the smoke last fall?
They did an amazing job. So I had family members over that had problems breathing, and they came over and they were breathing fine. So they did a good job. You do need to change them out. I probably need to change mine out. Get good about changing them out. It all depends upon what's happening in the air. But I'm surprised, even on non-smoke years, how much it catches. But during the smoke years, it's wow. It's like dark gray when I pull them out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, again, we appreciate the time. It was really, really awesome. And yeah, we hope to see you all at our next EcoBuilding webinar or event. Or did I hear right, TJ? Did you have some houses on the tour this year?
I did last year. I think this year I'm having another A&R Solar person that just did a remodel, and he's a civil engineer, environmental engineer. So he might be a great source of, you know, he's deep into the details of everything.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
Well, wonderful. Well, thanks again, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And I'd like to thank our sponsors as well. Thanks again, 475 High Performance Building Supply and Pathway Design and Construction for sponsoring tonight's event. We look forward to seeing you all at the next one. Happy spring.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good night.